Hi guys, I'm Oliver and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. And today is the third Deep Cuts podcast. Joining me on the podcast today is Luiza Liz, who is host and creator of the YouTube channel Art Regard. Really good channel, please go and check it out. On there she talks about all sorts of ideas relating to philosophy, specifically in the context of film. Today we do talk about some of that, but we also bring that into the context of music as well. Really interesting discussion. I hope you enjoy it. So, Luiza, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very
Absolutely
good.
fine.
Good. Yeah, thanks for joining me on only the third Deep Cuts podcast we've ever done, because I don't seem to have enough time to actually sit down and do it. And I also want to make sure that I get guests on where we've got lots of things to discuss, and I feel like that is definitely something that's going to happen with us today. I know we've probably got quite a lot to talk about. So,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, I've definitely got a lot to talk about. So, yeah, first off, I wanted to start probably from quite a selfish point of view, because I know that you went to the Toronto International Film Festival recently. It's been on recently, hasn't it? And I just wanted to find out what you saw and what we need to be looking out for coming up, because I'm a bit of a film fan myself.
Okay, so I have my Letterbox, my Letterbox app on me here.
Good
so I have all of the films I watched. But definitely, I watched Loveless. I watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer by Yorgos Lanthimos, which is my favorite. I was expecting this film very anxiously. He's one of my favorite contemporary directors for sure. And The Killing of a Sacred Deer is, I think, one of his most strong works so far.
Really?
So yeah, it was very, very good from every single standpoint of view in terms of film. It definitely elevates the experience of cinema, in my opinion. Was the best film I watched in the festival. I want to do an overview, like a full video essay on his work. After that, I just got very inspired to do that.
So how does it hold up to? Because the lobster, I really liked The Lobster. I thought The Lobster was great.
Is great.
Yeah, I mean, does it hold up to The Lobster? Is it better than The Lobster? Because
for me, it was better. It still has the elements that he used of absurdity.
Yeah.
But is even darker, because The Lobster has a very dark sense of humor in the film.
Yeah.
But The Killing of a Sacred Deer, I thought it was much more dark than it was talking much more of elements of the human condition itself.
Okay.
From a serious point of view, of course, has like certain situations in the film that they're so absurd that you have to laugh about it. Like, it's kind of like a nervous laugh. But for me, it wasn't that much of a funny film, but more of like a serious undertone, like a very dark undertone.
Yeah. So am I right in thinking that Lanthimos directed Dogtooth as well? Was it Dogtooth?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great film,
amazing.
isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah. I believe that The Killing of a Sacred Deer, he actually expanded some of the ideas that he was talking about already on Dogtooth in terms of family, in terms of traditions we have. I don't want to spoil the film, because I really think this film is the type of film that you have to go without knowing much about it. Yeah. But it is very powerful. So yeah, I think everybody should definitely check it out.
I'm definitely going to check it out. I don't know when it's out here. I think we always get these releases so much later. I don't think we're going to get it until probably November, December. But I'll definitely check it out. Yeah, it's funny because recently, because I go try and go to the cinema as often as I can. And at the moment, the cinemas over here, there is nothing that kind of caters for that audience that isn't the mainstream. And I don't know if you've seen the new It film, for example.
I watch it.
Have you seen? What do you think about it?
I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I have a giant collection of books. So it's more of an entertainment film than anything. It's not an art film. It definitely has good storytelling elements. I really enjoyed the film.
Yeah.
But from a different perspective, I guess, than I enjoy a film like Lanthimos' work. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to definitely, like you say, sort of know the difference between something that's supposed to be Hollywood blockbuster and something that's supposed to be more regarded and more artful. But I did feel personally with the It film that I felt like I was watching a tropey horror film. I was like, you could count the tropes. You're like, oh look, it's a horror film because this has happened and this has happened and now this has happened as well. And it's like one of those, isn't it? And I feel like cinema is so like that at the moment. I'm looking forward to
It's very you can tell what is gonna happen in the film very easily. But what I was gonna say is I think it is getting a lot of like negativity, but also loads of people going crazy over the film, that it's not necessarily that much of a higher regard film in my perspective. But
yeah. It made a lot of money, didn't it? It certainly made a lot of money. Someone's happy.
It broke the record of all time releases for horror film, in history. So the first week and the second week, both broke records. I watched it in the middle of TIFF, like literally, like in the festival. Like the week was going on, and we just stopped. Louis and I stopped to go watch it because I was excited about it. I'm a huge horror fan. I was excited. I was like, let's go watch it, and I really enjoyed it, the film, but from completely different point of view. But another film that is worth it watching it's Loveless. I would never know how to pronounce the name of the director. Andrei Ziga. I don't know. It's a Russian film. The same guy that did Leviathan, and the film.
Oh yes, yeah. I can't remember how to pronounce his name either. It's impossible. Yeah.
But the film is amazing. Is great.
Oh, I'm going to check that out. Leviathan was a really impressive film, I thought. That was so political as well. It's really nice to see. I guess a lot of the films that I watch from Russia, we watch people like Tarkovsky, they're very lyrical films, aren't they? They're very poetic and lyrical. Whereas that film, Leviathan, was so political. It was so about Russia's contemporary. It was something really exciting about that. So was this film also quite political, or did he take a different angle for this one?
It has a little bit of a political undertone in it, but mostly he's talking about family as well. So it was like one after the other, because we watched Loveless and then after we watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer, so they kind of complemented each other as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is political, because when you're talking about traditions, you're always talking about politics in a way. I believe, like certain things that we take for granted in our lives that we accept more than we should. So it's a good film. It's a story about a couple that's divorcing, and both of them don't want to keep the child. They try to like go back and forth with this kid, and he disappears, and then loads of things are gonna happen after his disappearance. But it's just the way he wrote and directed. He's making loads of reference to Bergman as well in this film, and so it's a very interesting film to check it out as well. I don't know if it's gonna go get released. The director was there in the screening, so he answered loads of questions in the end. It was sort of like a Q&A, and he was talking about in this film loads about how our society, like nowadays, like the way we live, especially in emerging countries like Russia, where I come from, Brazil, how loveless it's our state. State of lovelessness is very interesting. His approach was very interesting. Okay,
it's nice to see a filmmaker that's got such a purpose about every film that he makes, isn't it? I think that's why I like seeing these films so much, and like you were saying, you're making that differentiation between a blockbuster and something that has more of a sort of impact to it. But I find myself getting increasingly more and more bored by the mainstream side of things, because it doesn't offer. You sit down for 2 hours and you come out and it's so fast food, isn't it? You go, okay, that was, I guess, kind of enjoyable, but I've immediately forgotten about it. It's given me nothing to take away, apart from probably an endless number of sequels down the line. It's just a shame, really. But so in terms of, obviously I've told the people that are listening to this, hopefully a few people listening to this, what you do, and you've got your YouTube channel, Art Regard, and you talk about philosophy and art, and a lot of it's very sort of film focused, but as a creative person, what is it that draws you to talking about art and film in the context of philosophy? What was that kind of made you want to start doing that?
So I always wanted to work with film, but I also always wrote. So writing is always something that I always did. So it was very easy for me to combine both qualities and both interests of mine. But there was a specific time when I was doing my university degree that I actually quit my degree and went to philosophy for a year.
Really?
So, because I was like, that's what I want to do. But at the same time, it wasn't completely what I wanted to do with my life. So Art Regard is more of a breath of fresh air for myself to continue always studying about philosophy and always studying about film. And I think it's always essential to bring philosophy in the context of art. because it definitely opens our perspective and the way we see the world and the way we see ourselves in the perspective of the world and that we're interacting with. So yeah, that's, for me, is essential.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I think sometimes there's a backlash. I think I've found it because I've gone back to university recently, so I'm studying literature at the moment, and I'm going through that process, which I'm enjoying because I've gone back after a few years. And sometimes people react quite negatively, I think, to people that are doing arts degrees or they're discussing philosophy. They react negatively and say that perhaps talking about art in the context of philosophy is like a waste of time, or it's that horrible word pretentious. You know, the word, we spoke about this before, didn't we? How hateful that word pretentious actually is. What would you say what would your response to be to somebody that says to you, oh, well, what's the point of studying philosophy with film?
I guess it's a matter of how much you want to expand your knowledge, how much you want to expand your perception of things. Like, if you want to always look through things through a single box and through a single lenses, and that's what you want to do, and then you go for it. That's not how I want to see the world. That's not how I want to live my life as a creative person. So I hate the term pretentious. I hate it because it's just an easy way to just, I don't know, just take value of something that actually has loads of value. That is a personal search for me, but it also, what I try to do with our regard is I try to bring those questions that I'm asking myself when I watch a specific work of a specific director, and trying to bring that to discussion. It's not necessarily me trying to say, oh, this is the right way of seeing this film, or this is the right or the only way possible of seeing this film. But I'm trying to add another layer of interpretation and another layer of how can you discuss this director in a more broad way, in a more interesting way, maybe. So what I do is, like, sometimes I'm trying to bring a topic and then that I want to talk about and in philosophy, and then I'll try to think about a director that I believe that uses that, or even subconsciously maybe he talks about that in his films, and then I make my videos like on top of that sometimes as well, like different, not necessarily is always from the director to the philosophy, but sometimes from philosophy to the films as well.
Yeah. I think people get caught up sometimes, don't they, with the author's intent, and it's not, you don't have to take a philosophical notion or an idea. It doesn't have to come from that filmmaker itself. You, as a philosopher, can apply that. That's kind of part of the beauty of studying the arts in that kind of way, because there's the sort of things that you can come up with by pairing a philosophical notion together with a piece of film or a piece of art. It's really fascinating. I think a lot of people don't quite realise the beauty around that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exercise for the brain, is really, because I'm always learning something new, and every video I try to make, I try to come up with a new idea, or something that wasn't discussed before, or a perspective that wasn't talked before. So it's an exercise for myself, and I hope that people try to give themselves more opportunity to think differently and think, actually, just literally think.
Just think, people, please. If you're listening to this and you don't think, please just think. And it does come down to it, doesn't it? There's two different types of people. There's people that want to learn every day, and there's people that, don't. But I suppose to break that down a little bit further as well, you've got people on this earth that are intelligent, they want to learn, but it's different kind of learning, so they like learning the practical side of things, and for them, looking at art and philosophy isn't practical, it's not reality, it's
it's too much metaphysics.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking too pie in the sky, but I think, people like ourselves, I'm sure lots of people that are listening to this can see there's such a value in being able to talk about art in that way. And actually, it's just, again, that word pretentious does do my head in. I've heard it so often in the past few years. And just it's such an easy way of belittling something like you say that can have so much importance and have so much so much to talk about, so much value.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those misused words as well. In a sense, like, people just throwing words nowadays of anything instead of just. Well,
yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, pretentious is to pretend, isn't it? And just because I'm looking at, for example, let's say you're one of your specific videos and you're talking about something, and someone goes, "Well, that's pretentious." No, it's not, because you're taking an idea and you're working it through, and you're kind of utilizing that art and those philosophical ideas and working something together. You're not pretending anything. You're just
exactly.
there's no pretending there at all. I think maybe there's in a few very small instances where the term pretentious might
actually apply.
It might actually apply. Yeah, there might be a few points, and I think maybe in music occasionally I listen to something and I think, oh, you've used that instrument, or you've put that lyric in there. Like for instance, maybe they'll use like a say for instance. So this is a bit of a personal one. So I was in a band. I'm still in a band with a friend actually, and we used to make music, but we never really put it out or anything. And we got obsessed with Tarkovsky for a couple of years, and we started putting little snippets of dialogue into the songs.
Into music.
And they didn't really have anything to do with. I mean, the songs had nothing to do with Tarkovsky. I would say that's probably pretentious. Like, I put my hands up. If Jake is listening to this, you know we're right. Like, I'm pretty sure that's quite a pretentious thing to do. So I think in some ways, the pretentious word applies. But yeah, I don't think, especially
was it
not
pretentious? Maybe it was just a way of externalizing a huge passion or a huge obsession from the time as well.
Maybe. That's a very nice way of putting it. I wish you were around to review the music when we had originally released it, because that would have been helpful.
I'm scared now.
Yeah. Don't worry. I don't think that music will ever see the light of day, to be honest. So, yeah. I mean, so. It's funny, you were talking about these ideas of contextualizing art through philosophy, and a lot of people think it's a waste of time because, so through my degree at the moment, I've been doing a psychoanalysis module. So we've been working through the theories of Freud and Lacan, and although much of their theories are a little out of date and a little bit passé these days, I suppose, the discussion that we just had kind of reminds me of that psychoanalytic discussion that Freud had between sort of dreamscapes and reality, because he talked a lot about the fact so the child is playing and there's a dreamscape here, and this is where we're talking about making stories, and then there's the real and reality, which is a completely separate thing. And I think people don't understand that there's not two concrete things, you know. The real, what even is the real? I think people, as soon as art comes up, they go, well, you're talking about literature, you're talking about films and music, you're living in this dreamscape, you're at university and you're just, you know, wandering around, reading some philosophical books. It's not really the real world. And I think, I think the people that study that sort of stuff, the people that take time to sit and read some of these thinkers' ideas, understand the world better than many of those people who would dismiss them do. I guess I just want more people to read this stuff, you know? I want more people to do it.
I want the people that comment in videos like our videos or like audio video essayers and call us or anybody pretentious, I want them to actually counter-argument my ideas and maybe come up with like, oh, okay, so discuss with me, because I would love to have somebody to come up and like actually expand even more and like refute some of my ideas. That would be ideal for me.
It's about the discussion, isn't it? If I ever do a discussion video, I want people to disagree with me or have an idea, but not just to go, you know, oh, this is pretentious, this is crap. Did you get many comments that going, this is pretentious on your channel then?
No, the positivity I get from in that regard is really great. Like people usually come up with what I do get is people asking me questions, asking for recommendations of books or recommendations of like further readings. It's really rare that I get a comment up like, oh, you're being pretentious or something like that. It does happen, but it doesn't matter, because the positivity is really good. Like you probably experienced that with deep cuts as well.
A little bit. I would say I've had a look at your comment section that seems really positive. Like you've got a really nice basis of followers. I think people that actually appreciate the content, and for the most part, the people that watch deep cuts are the same. I've got a really nice audience, and there's only a few people that pop up occasionally to go, you know, to make a pointless comment that doesn't really attribute to the conversation. I had one the other day, so I put up that video about music as a coping strategy and talking about how people use it, and loads of people really opening up about personal stories, which was lovely.
Good.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing to see the community come together and actually want to talk about these personal issues. And the other day I woke up and I get pings occasionally of notifications, and it was someone saying this comment section needs to just take some Prozac, and it was like, oh, come on, like, really?
No,
yeah, what an awful thing to say.
That's terrible. No.
Yeah, I know, but you know, it's the internet, isn't it? And we're always going to get a few people like that, unfortunately, talking.
Yeah.
So it's a free medium, isn't it? So everyone's allowed to say what they want to say. But it's not. It's really nice, I think, that we've both got people that are watching the channels that are caring about the content, and it's just heartening to see. I don't know if you ever watched. I'm trying to remember what the YouTube channel's called now. It's a guy from Britain who talks about philosophy, and I can't remember what he's called, which is really bad because I wanted to sort of shout him out. What's his name? Hold on. Philosophy Tube. Have you heard of him?
No, I might. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, so he's got. I think he's got about 135,000 subs. He's doing really well, but he did an MA in philosophy and decided that because the tuition fees in this country have gone up so high, he would give his MA away for free and talk about different philosophical ideas on his channel each week, which is great, and he's got a really nice audience as well, and it's really nice to see there's channels out there doing that sort of thing. Because I remember sort of about a year ago, I don't know if you ever watched the channel, but it was the PBS Ideas channel.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I watched it.
So good, but
it was so good.
Yeah, but their viewer base just started dwindling, and I don't think they could afford to keep it on anymore, which is such a shame because there's just there's very few channels tackling those ideas now. If you look at sort of the 99% of what's going on YouTube, all the noise that's there, and then you have a few people. People listening to this can't see Louisa's face right now, but she made the same face as me when we were thinking about the majority of YouTube. The majority of YouTube. Oh,
it's sad world.
It is a sad world, isn't it?
But I mean, like we need silly things too in our lives. I believe that. I strongly believe that we need memes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but it's sad to see the amount of crap that's going on YouTube right now. On trending, if you go on trending, it's a shit show.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I love memes, but let's do memes in moderation, you know. Let's not have it's like 99% memes and 1% content. It'd be nice to have a little bit more of a
I haven't been watching as much YouTube as I wish to be watching. Like, just don't have time to check everybody's content that I want to check, like that, because that's also loads of people doing interesting things as well. But I also caught up myself, like, just sometimes watching the same YouTubers over and over. So, like,
no, definitely. So it seems like, because obviously we follow each other on Twitter, and I occasionally see that you're doing projects and things. It seems like you've got loads of things going on. So other than Art Regard, the YouTube channel, what other stuff have you got going on at the moment? Because it seems like you're just really busy.
Not that busy, but I just finished writing a book.
Oh wow, okay, brilliant. What's that about then?
So I decided I'm gonna self-publish it last year, so that's going on right now. It's a poetry book.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
I'm also writing a chronicles book, so I'm always writing, honestly. That's like my main day. Besides that, TIFF and some productions. Louis and I were working on script together as well. There's loads going on. I like keeping secrecy with things till they're ready to show. Okay. I'm more like that. But I finished writing Kintsugi, which is going to be my first book, official book. Yeah. So that's coming up next year. So that'll be exciting. I'm excited about that.
Excellent. Good. Well, I appreciate you wanting to keep projects secret, so I won't push you too much on them. We'll wait patiently, and we'll see what happens.
But Toronto life is busy anyway, so.
No, good. You have to be busy. You have to have lots of things on your plate, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing this kind of thing, you're doing a lot of thinking, you're doing a lot of creating. So it's good to. I think if you work on one project and only one project, you start to go a little bit mad, don't you? Like, I don't think I could do the channel. Only do the channel and nothing else. I think I always need to have other things going on as well.
You have to keep your brain working all the time. Otherwise, I'll go insane. Like, I get bored. I have to always keep doing something, like putting myself in projects, and like that's what keeps me going. Like literally.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a creative person, then that is what you end up doing. I've done it a few times where in my life where I've just worked 9 to 5 jobs and done nothing else, and it's soul sucking. For if you like learning all the time, you like to do those things, I wouldn't recommend it. It's it's not good. It's not good. So I mean, obviously, we're talking philosophy in quite a broad sense here. You know, your channel's about it. I sometimes talk about it, but in terms of the contemporary philosophical sphere, are there any contemporary philosophers that you feel are really capturing the problems and the ideas of the contemporary at the moment? Because I know there's a couple of superstars. You have people like Zizek, who has gained quite a lot of notoriety across the last few years for some of the things he's written and some of his books that he's released. Are there any philosophers you find at the moment that are really speaking to you, or that are really just talking about the contemporary in a really interesting way?
I was actually going to talk about Zizek. I really like his work.
Okay, good.
I really like his work, and I think he got, his ideas are great. He's a very open person to discuss his ideas, but also the fact that he's always bringing, like, he has an eye on what's happening right now, and always commenting and always showing his face. He's a different philosopher in a sense of, like, what we used to think, the idea we have from what it is a philosopher, right? Because because he's always in the media and is very different from, like, that reclusive thinker, that idea that we had in the past, which anyway, I think is interesting. I really, really appreciate his work, really like his work, what he's doing right now. I was going to talk about him, but also I think the term philosopher is really broad, because we can talk about people that are bringing new ideas to the table right now. Like, I don't know if I consider myself, for example, a philosopher. Of course, I'll have to be. I mean, I think there's loads of, like, philosophical intent of my work. Yeah. But I wouldn't consider myself a philosopher, for example. But yeah, I was thinking about that actually, because when you invited me to talk about music and philosophy, I was reading some articles about it, and Beethoven actually said that he considered music to be expression of philosophy. Okay. So what do you think about that? I wanted to. Oh,
she's flipped it around. Go, you catch me on the back foot.
No, I was thinking about that, and I actually wrote some things around. But do you think music is an expression of philosophy as well?
I think that some music is an expression of philosophy. I think it's very much the way. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's very much the way that there's a split with music, that there's a split with film. There's a cultural split, and I think there are some forms of music that feel more intentionally philosophically expressive than others. But there is also probably lots of music that you could, if you wanted to, choose to read philosophically into other things. You know.
Yeah.
This is the I mean, some of the music I listen to, if I try and think of music that is philosophically expressive, I tend to start thinking about ambient music. But I think that's probably because, for me, ambient music puts me into a certain state where I'm able to think about big ideas. That's my working music, or my thinking music. So I think that's probably quite a personal response myself.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I don't. It's interesting because, like, you know, we're talking about you could probably read philosophically into Justin Bieber's "Sorry" if you wanted to. You know, I'm sure you could do a whole video on that. So I think it's an interesting notion. What are your thoughts on it then? Do you think that there's a specific type of philosophically expressive music, or is it kind of broadly everything?
In a way, we're expressing ideas through sound with music, and music has a very, very important impact on our lives in the sense of, like. That's it. Like, there's music that will make you think or feel something. Music always makes you feel something in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's almost like a language on its own. So we can actually think philosophically about that. If you think about that, we're expressing ideas through sound. That we're expressing ideas, like almost like the speech that comes out from your mouth as well. But yeah, there's loads of, like, metaphysical properties in music for sure. I was actually trying to look for the name of the book. I didn't write it down, but there's a guy, he's a philosopher. He says that right now we're living in a contemporary renaissance.
Okay.
So Renaissance. Let me find his name. It's Christopher something. So many people. Wait.
Yeah, there's too many philosophers. That's why.
I know, but he's great. I actually recorded a podcast with him when I was working for CBC.
And, really?
But it's Christian, but I'm trying to remember his last name. Wait, I will find it. But yeah, I'll find it after. I can mention after. But he has this idea that we're living right now in the same kind of historical aspect, of course, like, than what it was in the during the Renaissance.
Yeah.
So that's
it's a great word, isn't it?
Yeah. That's how like people are. So
in what sense are we talking about? In the fact that art is such a large part of the Renaissance in terms of expression. Is that the sort of route he's taking with that idea?
Yeah, and also more exploration through art as well, but also our our historical moment right now, like such a rupture in terms of like science, what is going on in science and like in knowledge and like the internet. So that's like a new and that's gonna change, and it's changing every day the way that we express ourselves through art and the way that we interact with things. So I will find his name, and in the end I might mention.
Yeah, that's fine. Once you found
yeah, remember that. But anyway.
No, that's fine. No, absolutely. I think it's funny. I think it's a really, like you say, it's a really interesting idea, because music. This is probably one of the things I love about music so much anyway, is that, like you say, there's a lot of metaphysical properties to music, and there's such a fluidity and intent that it could be philosophical, but what that is doing philosophically is completely open to interpretation. You might listen to a piece of music and think, well, there is so much expression in a specific idea here, and I will feel something entirely different to that. And I think that's so much the beauty of music, and that's the reason it can be quite hard to talk about music, I think, as well. I think sometimes the properties of music, I struggle sometimes. The last podcast I did was a guy called Ian King, who he does quite a lot of journalism work in music, so obviously he talks about the properties of music all the time. He's reviewing music, so you sometimes got to find a way of reviewing music, but it's got to be in a way that connects with people. And I think sometimes when you read about art in a specific way, it's the very specific physical properties. So, for example, you're talking about a song, you're talking about what the bass guitar does, what the drums do, what the guitars do, in a very specific literal sense. And that doesn't really capture what music is, because that's just you're just telling people how that music's made. Whereas actually the way to talk about art is it's to do with its phenomenology, isn't it? It's to do with the way that we perceive it, or the way it makes us feel, the emotions that come off of it. And I think that's why we all connect with music so much, but why also it can be difficult, I think, to talk about music in a philosophical sense.
Yeah, but because the idea, the original concept of music in a philosophical way, saying is the definition would be sound, organized sound. But at the same time, human speech is also a form of organized sound, and machinery, like sounds of like machines or like animal sounds. So like that's the question: what is music? What is not music? Is like
we're going down a rabbit hole here, aren't we?
Yeah. And also, what about improvisation in terms of jazz, for example? That's not completely organized in the sense of like that has a pattern, like of a repetition and part and that. But what I love about music, and talk about philosophy as well, is that you're expressing an idea through sound and about an experience that maybe you had, or maybe you have while playing, and you create a new experience, and the person is listening to it. So it's like that merging of that bridge between two people or more people. That's what I think it's the real philosophical quality of music. It's there. It's great.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about concept albums then in that case? Because obviously concept albums are taking a concept. It might not specifically be a narrative. It might be like a broad concept, but they're applying that to music, and then that music is then speaking out to you with the ideas of the original author. So what are your thoughts on kind of concept albums?
I love when music is used for storytelling as well. So concept albums is like, I'm obsessed with it. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, for example. Okay. So I think they might be my favorite band. Like, since I was a little baby, my parents used to put Pink Floyd in the house all the time.
Nice. You had cool parents then.
But
definitely.
But concept albums, I think it's I don't think there's only value on music when it is conceptual. like,
No.
you know.
Oh no, definitely not.
But I definitely think it's taking a next step in terms of like storytelling in music and bringing ideas to music. And you can talk so much, and I think music has maybe it's more accessible for people than going to a museum, for example, or reading I don't know, reading Plato or like Aristotle, you know what I mean? Like you can just put your headphones on. Like it's so much more accessible these days. And
it's a form of release, isn't it? You don't have to go you don't have to go to the theatre, you don't have to, you know, queue up, you can just, it's a very personal thing now, music, isn't it? It's not a shared experience quite as much. That's actually interesting. I wonder what you think, as someone who reads philosophy, who thinks about philosophical ideas all the time and looks at the way art sort of works with it and contradicts it. One of the things that's been sort of not bugging me but in my head recently is how music has become so much more of a personal experience, and what that does to change the way we think about music and the way that music affects us. Because I know that obviously gigs are still a big thing. You go to gigs all the time, but it just feels like, you know, everybody's got their headphones in these days, walking around. It feels like I don't feel like I mean, obviously I share bands and artists through the channel, but in my everyday life of people I speak to, I kind of keep my music choices quite, you know, I don't really talk about it a great deal. They're quite personal to me. I wonder how much that's changed the way that we think about music.
We want to protect sometimes the music. There's loads of people that don't want the bands that they love to spread that much and to become mainstream. Like it's gonna ruin the music or something like that. No, I don't. I don't feel like that. But definitely. But I mean, like we never experience the same music the same way, because we're never the same people all the time, every day of our lives, and every second we change. Even I was thinking about that, like even the noise that is around us when we put our headphones on to listen to music, even that the little noise is never going to be the same. So every time we experience music, we're always changing, and then the music's always changing us. That's very beautiful, I think, to think about. So I don't mind, because I always think that art and philosophy, it has loads of the idea of the individual. Like if you didn't have the idea of the individual expression, we wouldn't be able to go as far as we went with, I think, thinking and art. Anyway, and I don't know, sometimes I think I love the catharsis of going to, I don't know, I went to TIFF Heaven with Lewis, and it was an amazing experience, completely cathartic. Like we were just like completely there with the band and like the people, and it was a mass of people, literally like a mass of people. Like I was in front, it was just like completely like feeling small and feeling like in the middle of those, you know, like the noise is just the band. It was a very like, you know, individual experience, but at the same time I was in the middle of like so many people. So it's always gonna be personal. I don't think it's really. Like, I think it always was, but right now it's more obviously personal because we are, like, on our own with our computers and our smartphones, whatever it is that we're using.
No, I know what you mean. I think I've had two, because like you say, that the Deaf Heaven experience, I've definitely had that experience with certain bands. I saw Swans last year, and whilst you're in a group with a group of people, there's something, it feels like Michael Gira is just singing at you. It feels like the whole band is this massive thrum of music is just for you. However, I have had experiences before at gigs. So for example, I saw Bjork, it was a few years ago now. Big fan of her music, massive fan of her music. Yeah, she's great, isn't she? But there was something, and it was in a festival setting, and some of that music is so personal. It, like, some of the tracks off of Homogenic, for example, are just some of my favourite pieces of music, and seeing them performed in front of all of these people, it felt like it was taking something away from me, because that was my personal experience with that music, and I don't want to share it, you know.
I wish I could bring Bjork here to sing for me every day. She's one of my all-time favorite artists. She's just unbelievable. Like the way she can express herself and her intimacy in music, and her voice is so full of soul in different kinds of way. She's amazing.
She's a true innovator, isn't she? Have you heard her new single yet off her new album?
Yeah.
Listen to it. Yeah, it's beautiful,
it's
isn't
great.
it? Yeah,
it's great.
It feels like she is going to be one of those artists that just carries on giving us such vital music. some people continue on through their career and it starts to get less, it feels like it's less important, and it feels like her music, if anything, is getting almost more important.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Bjork she's never disappointed me, never. It's crazy. Because first time I stumbled to her work, I was very, very young. I was like 13 years old. I used to go to, there was a record store close to my school. And I used to go there and I made friends there, like with the owners, like a fucking nerd kid. I used to go there and they gave me one. The store was, I remember that. The store was closing and it was actually closing for good. So they were selling like for $1, which is like $50, 50 cents of a dollar.
Yeah, wow.
So I bought like loads of records, and the first time I bought Vespertine was for the cover of it. The cover was so beautiful, and I listened to it and I started crying right away.
Really?
And I was like, whoa. And then after that, I just fell in love with her work forever. Of course, now I listen to it with much more mature mind when I was 13, but the feeling is still the same. There's no... Yeah, it's crazy. That's very personal to me, Bjork. We saw Nick Cave this year as well. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And that was a very, almost religious experience. It's crazy. He pushes everybody in. It's the sense of, we all experience something together. It's almost like a religion.
Yes, that's funny, great. Actually, because I've got a friend who saw Nick on Sunday. It was for his 60th. And they said exactly, the words religious experience were exactly what they said. And I saw him back in 2013 for the Push the Sky Away tour. And again, you're right. It's it's biblical. I saw him too, yeah. It's a biblical sort of, he's just able to bring everybody's emotion together and just exert it back out of that band. And it's it's the most unbelievable experience. I suppose he must have played quite a lot of stuff off of Skeleton Tree then, if you saw him recently. Yeah. That must have been emotional.
That's my second time seeing him, because I saw Push the Skies Away tour, and then the Skeleton Tree. It was so emotional. But at the same time, he played loads of the songs from the old albums. He played Stagger Lee from Other Ballads as well. Great. Which is, he always played the extended version of it, which I absolutely love him. But because we're talking about individual experience with music, but that was for me a complete, everybody was feeling at the same time the same things, and he was a getting together kind of experience, and I love it. I love it.
I mean, really that can be almost as powerful or more powerful than having a personal experience. I remember seeing Radiohead back in 2012, and they played Videotape, and you could feel the shivers. You could feel the going through every single member of the crowd, and it was this such a unique experience where everybody was feeling the same thing. And I'm sure you probably get that at a lot of gigs. It probably depends on your personal love for the band, doesn't it, or the artist? It probably, because I've seen some bands and thought, I'm not really feeling this, and you look around and there's people in tears, because they're just really, they're so connected to that music. It really means something to them. It's interesting what you said about Bjork actually as well, because she is one of those artists that takes the visual, I think, as much as she does with the music. Her visuals matter as much as her audio does. And like you say, the album art, there's something about it. I mean, the album art for Volnicura again is there's something so sad but beautiful about that cover, and it so articulates. My wallpaper. Yeah, is it? Yeah. Yeah. It so articulates the intense sadness of that record. I mean, that's one of the saddest records I think I've ever listened to. And it's amazing to see an artist that takes to both of those things and sort of marries them together so well, I think.
Crazy about going back to Nick Cave. Crazy that Skeleton Tree is such a personal album as well, and about the loss of his son, about the loss of his faith as well, because he was a Christian. I don't know right now where he stands on with his Christianity, but he used to be a Christian, and it's crazy for me how personal is the album, but at the same time, it's completely about his family, completely about him, but you also experience through his eyes, the ability that you can empathize through music. That's that's great. I think in terms of art, it's really rare that you experience something so powerful like that. But I don't think that art only has value when it's emotional. But when you have something that is both intellectual, but at the same time it moves you, I think that's I don't know, it completely drags me in.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's a really important point to make, is that it's not just the heavily emotional music that is the stuff that's most impactful. I remember, do you listen to Mount Eerie at all? Have you listened to
Yeah.
Mount Eerie? Yeah. So obviously, A Crow Looks at Me came out this year. Very, very hard album to listen to because
The one about his wife?
his wife.
Yeah.
His wife, yeah. So Phil's wife died, and he's now raising their child on his own. And man, the intensity of those lyrics, like very specific, tiny details about what he's missing, and the realization that Post is still coming for her, for example. You know,
That was I was gonna say that one week after she died, like the music, he says I couldn't listen to the whole album till now because
No.
it makes me cry too much, and and it just, I don't know, I really like him, but I couldn't finish yet. I'm a very emotional person, so I will do it one day.
Yeah.
But right now it's almost like he's trying to figure out what he, like, for what I heard so far. I think I went to halfway in the album.
I don't blame you. It's a really difficult album, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting one because there's almost, the melodic lines are really sparse, so the guitar work is very simplistic. He's almost speaking his parts. Yeah, so it almost becomes, it is like a document of grief rather than anything else. That doesn't necessarily make it more artistic or more important than another album at all. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because my two favourite albums from last year, hands down, were Skeleton Tree and Black Star, and both of those
Very
are
emotional.
very emotional. Yeah, exactly. So maybe I subconsciously do tend to connect more with the more emotive albums. But then having said that, there's been great albums that have come out this year that I've really liked, and they haven't necessarily tugged on the heartstrings in the same sort of way. So I think, I'm glad you made that point though, because just because it's emotional or very emotive, it doesn't mean it's necessarily more artistic.
Yeah, but it goes back to the idea that I said about music being a bridge between you and another person, like what you're feeling and what the artist felt or think or thought, when he was making the music. So like that's also like maybe your bridge is more into the emotional side of music. Yeah. But I think that's space for everything, really. It's crazy. I was thinking about that, especially talking about jazz, like improvisation, like music, that it's both. It was so intellectualized after jazz, but at the same time, like improv and jazz was like made to make you feel something as well.
Yeah. You were supposed to go and watch improvisers and lose your mind. You weren't supposed to go and sit there. But we can go even further back than that, can't we? We can go back to the early 20th century and talk about classical works. We talk about Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, for example, that made everyone go insane when he first played it. That wasn't being heavily intellectualized back then. But I think there is a history, isn't there, of intellectualizing art after the fact. So once we get 50, 60 years on, the intellectualizations of it start coming through a lot more. But I think what's interesting is people like yourself that are talking about art and philosophy are now maybe intellectualizing art earlier on in the process rather than waiting 50, 60 years down the line to start doing it. And I think that's important because it means that we can think about those ideas when the music's fresh as well.
Yeah, like we can evolve our ideas together with the evolution of the artist. I really like that about doing essays and like researching like what is going on right now. Of course, I always like I have loads of videos of like for example Hitchcock that is not working right now. But anyway, but the idea of music and art as mental entities of like a reflex of like what we think or we feel like. But Plato had the idea that music was actually abstract objects of our minds. That's very interesting as well to think about.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then they are, and there is such an abstraction there again with music, isn't there? I had a conversation with someone recently on my course. We were talking about we need to do a research paper where we take a piece of art, so it could be anything, and we have to do a psychoanalytic reading of it. And I said, I'm definitely going to do a piece of music. Maybe I'll do John Cage. Maybe I'll do some like prepared piano sonatas or something like that. And the person said, how are you able to analyse that? There's no lyrics. And it's like, but
what?
I mean, it's not just, that's the beauty of it. If Freud can talk for 30 pages about a statue, in a psychoanalytic capacity. There are ways of doing it, and it's important that we are able to try and even if we're doing it in a way that perhaps isn't, it's raw, or we're not quite getting it right. I don't feel like I feel like I'm still working out how to talk about music in certain ways, and I'm sure you feel the same when you're talking about philosophy, you're talking about film. You know, we're still working out ways of being able to express ourselves as humans when it comes to art, and probably that ambiguity. That ambiguity is what makes it so beautiful, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and music relates all the time to time as well, to time and present moment, and like it is a result of a human action, but in time. Meaning like either play, or like when you go play, or when you put something to play, a CD or a vinyl or like MP3, doesn't matter. Like it's always relating to the time, and then it goes back as well to what we were saying about like we never experience the same music the same way because we're never the same person. So like that's very interesting. I think about art in general, but like the quality of sound, especially because it's something so ephemeral and so it's not there. You cannot visualize it. I mean, some people say they can.
Oh yeah, well, it's a whole other thing entirely. Yeah, no, you're right. I think that is why I'm so connected to music personally. I think that's why we all do, because you're, like you say, ephemeral is the perfect way to describe music as an art form, I think. We all absolutely love it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've smashed through a load of topics today, but like, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Luiza.
Yeah.
We've talked about those. I think we're planning on doing some other stuff, aren't we, on your channel as well in the next month or so. So if people have enjoyed this, then they need to go and check out your channel anyway, because your channel is fantastic. Go and check out Art Regard. Go and subscribe. Go and have some conversations. I'm going to make sure that the next video you put up, I'm going to be right at the top of that comment section.
Great.
I'm going to be analysing and arguing, because that's what we like to do. But thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, that was great talk.
Thanks, Luiza.
Thanks for inviting me. Cheers.
You're welcome.